So let me just start with an introduction of myself, if that's okay, and then we'll talk into the topic, which is how HR can bring employee experience to life. We're going to try and share some real experiences with you. Luka's going to talk through some of the things that they've been doing at Centrica. We're also going to talk about some of the changes that have happened post-COVID to employee experience and try and bring that to life for you. It's going to be a little of a gallop through it. There's a lot to talk about, as you start to get a sense of in the plenary. So we're going to try and get through as much as we can and give you a chance to chat and talk as we go. You heard at the start, Aaron, I run Lace Partners, but just a bit more color to my background. I'm an engineer by education. Never managed to practice it, managed to go straight into computer science and working at Accenture, and then realized that I was better with people than I was with computers, and that led to my HR career. Love HR. I'm an HR profession by training. I'm a consultant by career. I'm a father of 4, which is where the name Lace comes from. And I am an avid member of the Guild of HR Professionals, active member there. I'm an active podcaster for them and for Lace Partners on all of these kind of topics. If you get to spend time with me, you'll understand I'm very passionate about how HR can make changes to business and really drive business results. And we've seen so many examples of that during COVID. We'll talk about those today. And a good HR for me is courageous HR. It's the HR that can stand up and have the discussion at the right time with the executives and the business and push the agendas that need to be spoken about that no one else wants to talk about. I also believe very passionately, as we're going to hear today, that HR owns that employee experience and has a major role to play in it, but cannot be the only ones accountable for it. There are so many people involved in it. And I'm sure Luka will talk to that because he's right in the heart of doing that in Centrica. So that's my little bit of an introduction, if you like, maybe, and I'm giving you that because as we talk, you'll hear some of that come through. In terms of my counterpart for today, Luka, do you want to quickly introduce yourself as well?
Quite the slide. This back when I had a beard. Until about a week ago. So hi everyone, I'm Luka Winterborne. I'm an EX manager at Centrica. I've been with the organisation for just under 8 years now, actually, and I kick-started, was at the start of the employee experience journey at Centrica 4 years ago, when employee experience was really just a buzzword and no one really knew what the hell it meant or what it did. So we've had a really good go over the past 4 years to define that, learn from our mistakes, hone in on what we are actually doing, and shift employee experience really from a place of sort of operational and incremental improvements to really having a seat at the strategic table. So understanding now how HR and EX can help shape truly organizational culture in the future. Never so more important than now we've seen through COVID. A bit of background then. I mean, I've HR through and through. I've been in HR for many years, since my early career, but then honed in on communications, employee communications and engagement. And then that led me back into HR and employee experience more recently.
Excellent. So Luka's going to join me as my partner in crime today. We're going to hopefully challenge you a little bit, share some real stories with you, and just hopefully give you some thoughts around whole experience design, which I think we would both say, because we're so passionate about it, it's never been more important than now. We are going to start with a little bit of experience. This is the one thing about running something with Steph, which is around happiness at work and about experiences. You feel that when you write your slides, there has to be experience in those slides, and there has to be some jokes. So there's a tall order. I apologize for the puns that will come later. But I'm first of all going to ask you to use one of these tools I mentioned earlier, Mentee. So Mentee is a tool that allows online polling. It's very easy to use. You can use your device to go to mentee.com. And just type in the code 953845, and you'll see 3 sets of questions there. And I'm just going to change my screen over so that we can see that now live in Mentee. There we go. So hopefully some of you are starting to arrive and see it. Oh, there you go. We've had our first vote. have you applied? And this first one is really to allow us to get a sense of how many people have used this before, have got some employee experience. This is a great tool. It's brilliant to use in voting online for this interactive process itself. I'm loving the balls flying in. I'm so glad I chose that one.
How many have we got coming in?
I think we've got about 30 in the group, so I will close the voting in a little bit, but keep firing away. Oh, we're on a 50-50 race here. Has anyone got a betting app? We should get one running right now. 50-50. Oh, the no's have it slightly on the right there.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to move us on to the next one. For those of you who didn't get a vote, don't worry, there's another one. Just again, go into mentee. Oh, yeah, the no's are definitely pushing hard there. It feels like a bit like Brexit to me at the moment. This is about the Brexit percentage, I think we got to, isn't it? I think we're somewhere close. Yeah, it's the other way around this time. It's the other way around. So I'm going to just close the voting on that one. And I'm going to move us over to the next question. So this one, what 3 words describe how you feel about your current HR process experience? You can type in whatever words you want, but be aware there is a filter. So no profanities, please, even if that's how you feel. No profanities,
yeah.
Well, you can write them, but I think the filter should
be honest.
The great thing with mentee is the filter is clever enough that it has multiple languages. So if you're not a native English speaker, and you wanted to use another language to swear in about your HR processes, you could have done. Oh, dull. That's a classic, great one to start with. I'm chaotic.
Aaron, Nicola's said that she can't see the results. I was just wondering, Aaron, if the results should be live on the screen at the moment, or we're going to come back to those at the end.
They should be live on the screen. Let me just switch over. Thank you, Nicola. The rest of you can't see those things happening. Can you see that now?
Yes.
People see the screen? Thank you. Thanks, Nicola. That was great. Yeah. Appreciate that. There you go. Now you can see them coming in live. Brilliant. Sorry for that. I shared too narrow a screen earlier. There we go.
Oh, we've got bureaucratic.
I love the way it rebuilds these clouds as you go. Bureaucratic. HR? Bureaucratic? Really? No, surely not. Complicated. I like the right for disruption. It sounds like that's a hashtag. Fantastic. Any more before I move us on to the next one? Oh, a few more coming in.
Nice to see inclusive.
Great.
But the rest seems.
Yeah. And you'll not be surprised. These are exactly the things we'd expect to see. Clunky, bureaucratic. And it'll be interesting, I think, as we go through, we'll share some of the examples of how things have changed over time on other things. So great. I am going to close the voting on that one and move us on to the next. And last but not least, 2 slider questions. I'm just trying to give you a feel for the different things you can do. I feel our processes are centered around the employee experience, strongly agree or strongly disagree, and we regularly take feedback. As you will talk about, feedback is massively key to employee experience. So really quite a strong point to make. So there you go. I have to say, this is one of the reasons why I love Mentee so much, just that whole interaction you can get as you use this, and you think about how you can use these tools around some of the experience activities you're doing, or even just polling feedback, maybe having this running while your CEO or the leadership team are talking, doing presentations, engaging with the teams, have these running. It can be really quite powerful for real-time feedback and allow people to adjust. Clearly, we've got a mixed group in the room today around employee experience. Hopefully there'll be things here for those who have not had employee experience before, and those of you that have. So we'll try and share for both. Great. In the interests, I don't know what language I was speaking there. In the interests of time, I am going to move us on. Thank you so very much. It's a real mixed group there. It's interesting. Feedback is where I expect it to be, just on the edge of things, and then you can see there kind of the voting patterns, if you like, for the others, for where we are in employee experience. Great. Thank you so very much. We will, as part of recording this, it's available for people to see. So let me just switch back to the presentation we were in. And just let me start with a statement that might seem a bit strange, given we're talking about employee experience. But I think most of you in HR will get it. Your employees won't be happy all the time, and they shouldn't be expect them to be either. Good employee experience is not about making people happy. As my business partner said, it's not all about unicorns and rainbows, people. It's not about unicorns and rainbows, but it is about having a fair process, right? It's about having a transparent process, about having a process that is realistic, frictionless, definitely easy to use and engaging. But if you think about HR processes, there are so many of them that have difficult moments in those processes, in those experiences. Whether that be onboarding somebody and then going through background checks, which you have very little control over, right, depending on the industry you're in, or performance management. There is always going to be a conversation during performance management that may not be the way people wanted it to be, or the outcome they wanted it to be. Mandatory training. How many people? It's very hard to sell the experience of mandatory training when people are busy doing work. What the key thing with good experience design, as I know Luka, you're very keen on, is making sure that people understand that that is a difficult moment in the experience, but there are ways to mitigate that. So we're going to go and talk a little bit about the role of HR in there, in these areas. And before we do, though, why is it important? I asked for a slide about engagement, and this is what the team gave me. I think I didn't quite spell out what I was looking for at the time, so apologies. What does it matter if your employees are engaged? And you saw some of that. You saw from Steph at the start, that uptick that they saw at O2 around sales and retail. Good engagement and good experience. Good experience leads to good positive experience. It leads to good engagement. Good engagement leads to positive engagement with customers, and that in itself then leads to outcomes around uptake in sales, productivity, etc. And that's been proven time and time again. The business case, Luke, you'd agree, I think, from your Centrica work is very clear.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Luka.
No, I was going to say I couldn't agree with that more. It's the foundation we based our employee experience journey on. It's exactly that life cycle, that journey around. And Richard Branson actually did this to great effect at Virgin, and he was actually one of the pioneers that said improved and engaged colleagues will eventually lead to improved and engaged customers, greater customer retention, greater profits, greater customer outcomes. It's a really simple equation. But I find it quite difficult that some organisations find it quite difficult to grasp what that actually means, how to break that down, and then how to achieve it in a logical step-by-step way. It's one of the things we've struggled to do at the start of our journey at Centrica, but I think we've made great progress in doing so. I mean, maybe later on we can touch upon some of the examples and how we've done that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And don't take it from either of us. Go read the data. Great places to work, their data set. If you're looking for justification for your business case, the data's out there. They have thousands of businesses they work with, data over 15 to 16 years, and it clearly shows a difference, and not just a difference between great places to work and highly engaged organizations and bad organizations, but the difference between good companies and great places to work. So well worth looking into. We'd be remiss in talking about experience today if we didn't recognize how things had changed and what that kind of new dawn has brought us post-COVID. There is a significant shift. And what we saw initially was that whole sense around purpose, people engaging around saving the NHS, working together, a global pandemic that impacted everybody, regardless of social economic status, race, etc. And that sense of purpose we saw, therefore, and a real uptick as people sort of got into finding a way through, and productivity. There's lots been said around that in things. And you can see here on some of these quotes, people saw those real positive impacts around productivity during those earlier stages. And I think the challenge now for employee experience and for HR is that as we move away from a global pandemic to more local changes, as we move to an environment where the impact hopefully will continue to grow less over time, although there is peaks right now, that sense of overarching purpose needs to be replaced by something. And therefore, we're starting to see new stories start to run that bring in the more negative side of this flexible working, this return to the home, etc. Longer hours of work, the mental health and well-being challenges that come with working remotely. I like the burnout age in the top left. I got it. 32 is the burnout age. I'm coming up for my second one soon, Luca. That's a bit depressing, isn't it? According to that stat. But it's quite depressing, isn't it? But these things are starting to appear, and there's a reason for that. That sense of purpose that drove people through the earlier days of lockdown and remote working, that has diminished. Organizations are now having to think really carefully about the experience that employees are having in their businesses and how they engage. So we need to think that through. We talked about mental health, well-being. I know you're very passionate around this space, Luca.
Extremely, yeah.
I thought this was a shocking stat. The number of people experiencing some form of depression has doubled since the start of the pandemic. I know you're focused a lot on that.
Enormously. Deborah's asked a really good question actually in the chat. And I'd really like us to spend a bit of time just working on that in a second. But just on the mental health front, we're using a saying. We've got this. You can call it corny, whatever you want to call it. But in Centrica at the moment, we're saying that mental health is a spectrum that we're all on. So that's possibly not been as obvious pre-pandemic than it has been post and during. For obvious reasons, but I think organisations that will start to embrace and understand and respect mental health and well-being as a priority will see higher rates of employee engagement and satisfaction, and therefore productivity and enjoyment in the workplace. We're having a whole week of stuff at Centrica going on this week, culminating in global town halls with our CEO, but also the more personal tea and talk podcasts with leaders and teams that's happening all throughout this week. And we also use an app called Unmind. So I have this thing pings up on my phone every day to check in. And we've seen a huge uptake in the Unmind app since the pandemic took hold. And we've promoted it because different things work for different colleagues, and again, it's about having the variety of channels wherever you can afford to have those variety of channels. And if the budget doesn't stretch, be creative. But mental health certainly has become what it was already, but it certainly has become a significant priority for us in our employee experience journey.
I agree, and I've got other clients, large banks, etc., using Unmind and other tools like that. Headspace and so on, and so I agree completely. Let's come back to Deborah's point. I think it's a really good one. I'm just conscious I want to showcase a little bit about some of the other things that are going on, but let's come back if we can to that. And I'm watching carefully. Steph keeps pinging me to tell me the time, and Matt to make sure we get through this so we don't overrun. Again, we can't have a conversation without talking about the office being dead, or is it? Interesting. I was in a client office this week for the first time in 6 months, running a workshop. Holds 400 people. It's in the centre of London. It is a beautiful, beautiful office, collaboration space, office space, meeting space, so on. We were 8 people in there. We saw no one else for the whole day.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
And this lying fallow. So it is clearly a big part of your thinking about your experience. People joining your organisations, as you will be having them now, right, and never having met anyone physically. Not having the culture that's embedded in your organization through physical things like an office to impact them, that changes the way you have to think about the experience you're designing for people. There is the other side of it to bear in mind, and a number of you will be working in sectors that are like this, which is, in the UK, this is a UK stat, 54% of people, or 53.4% of people apparently, according to the ONS, can't deliver their business or can't do their work from home. So still a large proportion, whether it's hospitality, whether it's retail, whether that's care work, etc. Clearly, there's still a large population that your experience needs to cater for who aren't working from home and still need to come into what can be considered some dangerous environments. So it's again, that has to be factored in. So how has employee experience design changed in there? I think three big things to take away. technology has shifted completely. You're all experiencing it now. We're playing around with some of the mentee stuff. Look at Mural, look at Unmind, look at how you use your Microsoft Teams, etc. Now, it's really, really changed the way experience design is delivered. Make use of those technologies. So much more of the population now can access and has proven that they can access tool sets that they couldn't before. So technology is a major part. There are new experiences to be mapped. That's the other thing, whether that's home working, whether, interestingly, commuting to work, in effect, is almost a new experience in its own right for some of your organizations, depending on where you're based, depending on where your populations are coming from. That is a particular experience. So there are definitely new experiences to be mapped out. And there are new personas to consider. So hopefully most of you are familiar with the concept of personas, describing your your employee base in different forms to describe the type of experience that they have and the way they engage to help you think through experience design. Here are just 5 examples that we have, that didn't really come up as personas before. Working from home parents, a lot of you are in those circumstances and situations. Those in house share. I have organizations where, it's really difficult for people to homework when they're, there's 4 people sharing around a kitchen table, and that's the only desk space they have. Clearly living alone as an aspect, carers post-furlough, these are just examples. And I think the other view of that, the other dimension to think about is how does that shift if you're an introvert versus an extrovert in terms of how you experience things? Because this technology, this distance polarizes things like that in how people experience employee experiences. These are things to think about when you're working through. I don't know, Luka, if there's anything else you'd add to that, if that resonates with what you've seen at Centrica.
So it's an interesting how you cut persona types and do your employee segmentation. Is there are a number of different ways that you can do this, and my thinking originally at Centrica was that we would cut by job type and job role. So we had engineers, we had customer contact center employees, we had group office, group function stuff. Then you can drill down further, of course. Now we are seeing the shift far more into the 5 that you've kind of already highlighted. So how thinking about, and this is again one of the keys to a successful employee experience, is putting yourself in the shoes of your employees. Again, one of the things that some HR professionals and some organizations still aren't doing very, very well is putting yourselves in the shoes of your customer. In effect, your customer in this case is obviously your employee, and you must think about them, in my mind, as customers, because you wouldn't put your customers through poor experiences. Why should you put your employees through poor experiences? So these 5 do resonate, and we are actually planning, especially for our pilot sites and our re-entry into office locations. We're thinking along these lines, actually, Aaron. And I hadn't obviously seen these before you shared them with me, but clearly great minds kind of thing. We are thinking about the impacts on living alone for an employee, for a colleague. What does that actually look and feel like? How can we mitigate that? How do line managers need to step up? How does leadership need to bridge that gap? And then what tech resources can we layer on top of that to make their experience better, healthier, more productive, and ultimately more rewarding for them? But yeah, I mean,
agreed.
Yeah.
So I think, as you say, think through these personas, put yourself in those shoes. Vicky is raising a great point on the chat there. Being a head teacher, HR is a very different experience just now. And it's about keeping people very positive whilst keeping people apart. Where in an environment where you actually have to bring them together. So we're all experienced. I think the one thing to take away around this is there is no big blocks of personas anymore around employee experience design. This has opened up so much individual experience in this. People commuting, not commuting, people at home, people with people they're caring for, people having to come to work in difficult environments. There's so many dimensions, and you need to think through for your business which are the main ones as you start to design it. I'm conscious of time, but I'm going to jump through some of these quite quickly. But we will share these with you as well, because there are ways you can enhance this employee experience. We've talked on some of them, so we'll be okay. So the first is active listening. Feedback is really key. We know that organizations, through surveys, etc., that Qualtrics talk about this quite a lot. Organizations that act and are seen to act on the feedback they receive typically have a 50% higher engagement rate in their organizations. So it's a major part of getting good engagement, good experience, is listening and acting on it. Talk about the why, understand, get underneath it, even if that's an inconvenient truth for you, because those are typically the things that shift the dial. And ask yourself, what else would, who else do I learn from? So listening isn't necessarily just listening to your employee base. It's, as we're doing now, listen to others in the market, listen to other people who are in adjacent industries, partners in your supply chain. How are they dealing with this? How are they coping? Anything to add on listening before I jump ahead, Luca? Sorry, I'm speeding through a little bit.
I was going to say we're running out of time a little bit, but the one takeaway from me, guys, is that listening, employee insights, and data analytics from your colleagues is the most important thing to enable a successful employee experience foundation. And you can gather data and insights and listening exercises through lots of different ways, whether it's workshops, which I do at Centrica, surveys, whatever, pulsing on various different questions. Get your data together. It's the most important thing you can possibly get, and it will educate how you then design an improved employee experience. But yeah, agreed. Running out of time.
The second topic
I could talk for hours, Aaron, on this.
I know. We both can. This is a 3-hour session in its own right. It's so, and we're very passionate about it. Yeah. And there's lots of practical things you can do. Yeah. Tailoring. We've talked about the personas, making sure you actually use technology to reach people. I have to say, this is one of my puns, variety, because it is the spice of life, hence the Spice Girls. I'm so sorry. It was a long night. But, thinking about how you do variety of this, I know, because I've got the joke now. Okay, I know. One of the things you can find with engagement and experience is that it plateaus, right? So what works this week might not work next. Think about variety, think about moving things up. So once you've mapped your experience, think about the interventions and have a number of interventions you can apply and you can change, because that variety, that change is important, as important now, because the monotony of remote working, the way we engage with videos and so on. I won't go through the next slide, but this is just some examples of things that we do in LACE, for example, cook-alongs, LACE radio, challenges on a daily basis, origami classes, all these sorts of things. These are more the social side engagements. Humanizing, we talked about the importance of this, and some of you will have had good experience and some of you will have had challenging experiences. Not every leader is good at being open, transparent, good in front of people. It is difficult. It is a key role for HR in helping them be that more effective and thinking on the ground. The days of preparing a PR statement, putting it out in the email and waiting, going through a tranche of sign-offs before it ever goes out. Leaders are in front of people in real time, making decisions, talking openly about what's going on in the business. You need to think about how to do that. So humanizing is really key for leaders, for line managers, etc., in making this a success. And setting the right experience. And then last but not least, pacing. We did start to touch on this in the plenary at the start. There is a lot of different things to think about here. This is the fatigue aspect to this, the impact on mental health and well-being, taking days off. I have clients who are actively saying Friday is a no video day. No video, unless you're with a client, it's a no video day. To give people time off. I've got other clients enforcing 2 hours a week into diaries, 3 hours a week into diaries of no video calls, so people can get work done. I think it was in our chat earlier, you're on calls all the time, but not getting a chance to take actions. So think about those aspects of the experiences you're mapping out for people as well. Anything else you'd add around sort of pacing, Luca?
No, I think you've covered the most important things. We're sort of looking at doing very similar activities than the ones you've just covered. So, and enforcing, I know it sounds like a really harsh word, enforcing an hour's break, whereby you literally do not do any Teams work. You don't log on. You don't go onto a Teams VC. You have your break. You get some well-being time in. And again, we're finding Unmind and other internal resources can really help to promote that. Whether it's an intranet news article or communications from your leaders, tying back into trust. We're seeing that, what's setting good organizations apart from middling to organizations not performing well is how colleagues and employees are perceiving trust in leadership. If it all kind of links together, and it's you know, COVID's been a forced transformation for many organizations, actually, in many different marketplaces. And that's, again, where we're seeing some organizations really thrive and their leaders step into the limelight and, you know, have the courage to do those town halls, stand in front of your 6,000 to 10,000 people, or however many, whether it's 10 or 100, have the courage to take the bull by the horns and do that, and be honest about the communication that you're giving. But yeah, that's
excellent.
Little build.
And so, as I say, so many things here. Happy to feel free, please, to reach out to Luka and I after these sessions. I'm going to ask you just to do one more mentee question for those who are in, just to give yourselves a vote on mentee.com. Use 953845 as your code if you can, and just let us have your view on which of those 5 things we just went through would be the best. We're then going to finish in about a minute and a half's time. You have a 5-minute comfort break till 10 past, and then the next breakout session will start. You don't have to go anywhere. Luka and I will be off and about. We'll go and find our next group. But please come in, stay here, go get us coffee. Remember, switch yourselves onto mute and videos off if you want. And then the next group will start at 10 past in here. So fantastic to spend time. Thank you so much for your chat as you've gone through. I appreciate there's a lot to have taken through as you went through this. Deborah, thank you for your comments there around people are not expected to work additional hours. That's great. There's some great stats came out recently that the amount of additional hours people do equates to, I think it's 7 hours a week, or 7 days a month. I think it was something like that. It's a horrendous number that it's adding up to. And you're right, it has to be leader led around that behavior. To say that's not how we do things and so on. But again, this is where the role of HR needs to come in for that courage around setting this is not a good thing for us and not sustainable, right? Not sustainable.
Yeah.
Things.
We've got so many good comments.
Meetings, idea. Yeah, some great things coming in.
And Aaron, you said earlier on, you know, guys, if you want to connect with us on LinkedIn afterwards to talk more about employee experience, you know, I can't speak on your behalf, Aaron, but I know you're going to say yes. Please do reach out. This is our passion area. EX and the evolution of HR to focus on employee experience really is kind of really gets Aaron and I keeps us up at night. So yeah, please do reach out, connect with us. We're running out of time on this session, but we'd love to talk to you more if you have a passion to do so.
Thank you, everybody. Hopefully that's been a useful session for you all. Thank you so much for those votes. Hopefully we're leaving you smiling like the happy frog and not like the confused cat. Bless him. A little bit of brain freeze. All right, there you go. This is the bar that Steph sets for me when you do these sessions with her. So there you go. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop. I know where I get these. It took me years to find these. Years.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah.
Right, so I'm going to stop sharing. We're in our group again. Matt and I are off. Have fun. Enjoy yourselves, and enjoy the next group. We will hopefully see you all again in the QA at the end. Thank you.